when you look back at your trajectory in insurance, what would you have done differently? Would there be anything that you would have done differently in terms of maybe staying there 8 years? Would you have still stayed there 8 years? Would you have switched up to get a different type of experience? Or do you feel like that kind of led you to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Sorry.
No, that's great. I think what I would have done differently is I would have gotten like some mental help sooner. And because, okay, so like just throwing it out there. Yeah.
Like I can relate really hard, but probably for my own reasons.
So like I've grown up my entire life having issues where I'm constantly trying harder than everybody and not being like good enough, or being like, just for reason or another, not being able to like move on certain things or actions, and just long story. Like I very recently found out, like within the past, couple of years, I've got like some ADHD issues, like a touch of like possibly even like autism spectrum disorder. Like
I'm literally getting tested right now. They're like,
no, it would probably be considered like, because the spectrum is different now, but it would be probably more like Asperger's. You know what I mean?
Right. What do they call it? AUD spectrum, right? Because it could be like autism to ADHD and Asperger. Yeah, like a continuum.
Yeah,
and
it's very life. It's like very high up on the spectrum.
Yes,
so very
and high
functioning, and very low is like you can't talk and like stuff like
that.
But I didn't really understand this until we started figuring out my son, because my son has autism, and we've gone through this whole thing. And when it was first brought up, I'm like, oh no way, he cannot have autism, like whatever. But then you start learning more about it, you're like, oh yeah, maybe he does have it. Maybe I have it. And then I got tested, and obviously, sure enough, like I do. And so, I went through probably about a year of going through different types of therapies and medications to really kind of like dial stuff in to really figure it out. And when I really did dial it in, my mindset totally changed. And I look back at my time at my other insurance company, which like the longest time I was there. I didn't get along with certain people. There was like some arguments that I would have with certain people, like disagreements. Like I'm looking back, I'm like, man, I was the weird one. I was the one that had the problem. Like I had a manager there, and she was the nicest lady. She was very cool. I had a disagreement with her. Like we had conflicts. And my wife, like when we were working from home, and she would get on the call with me, and my wife was like, why were you so mean to her? She's just trying to like talk. And I'm like, I don't know. And I thought she was being like, whoa, I can't believe she would do that. There was just so many things. And it's just like, man, I think that's what I would change, because I probably would have had a much better outcome. And I probably would have maybe like promoted or gotten to a different position. Like, I think I probably would have still had a future there, had I not had these problems that I was working through that I didn't know that I had.
Right.
And I kind of want to go back to some of these people and say, like, hey, I'm sorry I was such a jerk. That's probably one of the biggest things.
I think so many things were going wrong when I look back at my corporate career. So many things were going wrong in my marriage, particularly. And it bled out to other things, including work. And so socially, when you were saying that, I was like nodding my head, like, and with shame and relating, not necessarily to lashing out on managers. They always scare me enough where like I do feel like I submit to that one person. It's other coworkers that have been more of the issue, dealing with other females. I'm going to say this carefully, but when you maybe are an alpha female, and it has nothing to do with sexuality. I do happen to be bisexual, but I'm just saying it has nothing to do with it, but everything to do with it at the same time. When they sniff out that you command leadership from men and women, only a very secure person can be with that. Only a very secure man can be with a woman who truly shines a lot and is still all about them, but can truly let her have her shine. An insecure person will always pull that person down. I shouldn't even just say woman, but will pull that person down to their level.